Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another Last of Us review podcast discussion. I'm your host, Richard Billy Jr., and tonight I'm joined by Mr. Adam Vale. How's it going, Adam?
What's up, internet? What you doing? What you doing? Are you hyped? I'm hyped.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're also joined by Mr. Carlos Romero. How's it going, Carlos?
What up, Rich? What up, everyone? By the way, for those that don't know, we're recording this on a Friday night, which seems pretty odd. As we normally record on Mondays, so pretty interesting that this episode came out before the Super Bowl is on Sunday, so it got pushed forward a little bit. So glad that we got a double dose of Last of Us, in less than a week. So can't wait to talk about it with you guys.
I gotta look up some of my other shows that I watch, and I'm curious to see if this is a trend across the board with other shows that usually fall on the weekend. If they're all bumping to avoid the collision with what is the Super Bowl or the big game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. You definitely have to check that because there probably are some other shows that are going to follow that pattern. So tonight we're going to be talking about The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 5, Endure and Survive. So I definitely want to take a minute to thank everybody that has been subscribed to the channel. If you're continuing to like the conversations, please consider leaving a comment, liking, and subscribing to the channel because we are going to continue to cover the whole season. So for those of you that already know how the format works, we can talk about our initial impressions, then we go into the deviations that we noticed, and then we just basically talk, have a freestyle discussion about other stuff in the actual episode. So for the initial impressions for this episode, I want to go first this week because I have a few things to say.
Oh.
So, and let me just say this right now, right off the bat.
No shit.
In my personal opinion, this is the best episode of the entire season so far.
Whoa.
Yeah, because like I said, from playing the game, they nailed a lot of things in this episode that made me feel exactly those moments when we were with, Henry and Sam in the actual game. Now there were some deviations because there's some things that were in there that they had to add in there to further flesh out the storyline. But I was very surprised with how much they were able to fit into this episode, considering that we basically got most of the backstory of Sam and Henry, and then you got a conclusion at the very end. So I thought it was very, very, very well done. And of course, very heartbreaking because of the other stuff that they added to it, which again, some of that stuff was deviations because it did not happen in the game. But I thought it worked very, very well together as a whole. So
I was waiting for them to say, it's like, oh, do you know my cousin? Oh, we got separated. What's your cousin name? Connie. Oh, but you Walking Dead people, yeah.
Yes. Well, hey, they, I think they could have definitely did that. I'm glad that they didn't really change the outcome of those two characters because we already know what happens to the characters in the game. But I just have to say, like I said, I know we spoke about a lot of the other episodes. We enjoyed the Bill episode a lot. I'm just saying from my personal opinion, because again, I don't know what you guys are going to say yet. I'm just saying this, in my opinion, was their best episode the entire season so far. Now, again, we'll see what happens. That's just my initial impressions. But I would like to go to you next, Mr. Carlos Romero, since you had nominated that I should go first before we started recording. I'm going to put you on the spot. And let's get your thoughts on this episode.
Let's talk about this episode. Well, I'll start by mentioning, we've talked about things since we all played the game that's in this panel. We discussed some of our favorite scenes from the game that we're expecting and we're anticipating for the show to produce. One of my favorite scenes in the whole game is the Henry and Sam stuff. That's some of the peak for me for the Last of Us video game. The emphasis on the Last of Us video game. So I'm anticipating this, and I'm looking forward to it like anyone else that's played the game, because I feel like it's a pretty generally loved storyline for many people who played the game. So I was highly anticipated. So we finally get to it, and we discussed previously. We felt like, okay, this episode is gonna start with Henry and Sam, and it's gonna conclude their storyline in one episode. We discussed that last week, and now Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. is asking me whether this episode lived up to the hype, the anticipation, and all of my emotional distress that I had when playing it in the video game. And I want to mention Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. I
Yes,
agree
sir.
with you. This
Oh,
man, I felt like this sort of generated the same type of emotions for me in this episode that it did in the video game. I gotta applaud them, man, because it's hard to pull that stuff off, and I'm really glad that they pulled it off, man. The dudes that played Henry and Sam, man, that Sam kid is adorable, you know,
mhm.
and the way that he interacts with the group, and the deaf stuff, I didn't know that was gonna happen. Like, that's deviation from the video game. So it was interesting how they integrated that with the storyline and with the character. Um, yeah, I gotta. There's one thing in this whole episode that I didn't like. I could be convinced otherwise, but there's one thing, and I'll talk about it later. There's one thing that I didn't like, but the crux of this whole episode is Henry and Sam, and it's Henry and Sam with Joel and Ellie, and they pull it off. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm with Rich. I agree with Rich. This is my favorite episode of this season so far. Uh, we'll talk about scores at the end of the show, but as far as overall thoughts, initial thoughts, yeah, I really love this episode. I really enjoyed what they did with it. All the callbacks to the game, the deviations, for the most part, worked for me, and yeah, great episode.
Awesome. Great takeaways, Carlos. And now we're going to go to Mr. Adam Vale for your initial impressions of this episode.
I had concerns right at the beginning. I was nervous because when they showed Sam and Henry and the backstory, I'm like, oh, don't tell me it's going to be like half of the episode just their story and them running and dealing with all that drama. And then we have that connection, sort of like what we had with the Bill and Frank. But that was the whole episode. I was worried that this was going to be half. Like, oh, really? And then I wasn't paying. I was, I'm watching it, but then I was looking at my phone, and then I noticed it was just quiet. And I looked up, and I was like, wait, what's going on? And I was like, wait, is that text? Is this sign language? What is going? Oh, okay. So they flipped it up, and they made the Sam deaf. I was like, okay. Now I really have to pay attention to this. But overall, though, as it progressed, I was like, all right, we see the connection. We see what's going on. That was also part of the game. But I was also sort of thinking that if there was any story that comes out of the game that could get a twist, just like we saw with Bill, which was not so much a twist because we don't know what happened to him in the game. They left him. He could have died, right? There could have been a thing. But I was like, I could see Sam and Henry joining them and then separating at some point, or making it to that community where Joel's brother is, and then staying there. They get a different ending. I could have seen that. That could have been a different. That's very possible. So I'm like, okay, but that didn't happen. But overall, it really shocked me toward the later half of the episode, and that seems to be the pattern with all these episodes. That the right toward the tail end is when the poop hits the fan, and you see all the activity, the shooting, fighting, enemies, clickers, all that stuff always seems to happen toward the end of the episodes. And it didn't disappoint. We got to see all of them come out. Gears of War style with the horde, and all that, you got all that stuff. They were all coming out of a sinkhole, and it's like I was like waiting for somebody to scream out, "Throw a grenade! Close the hole!"
Ellie doing the roadie run.
Yeah, someone do the. She sort of was, If you look through the scope from Joel, who's pretty good with the rifle. with the sniping and stuff. So, but yeah, we'll get into that. But it was good. It threw a little bit of everything. We got to see the bloater, and they pulled it off. They pulled it off. That was the big concern, right? Can they pull it off and not make it not? I don't want to say comical, but like, oh, it's the disbelief. This is just one of those, because you're so invested emotionally with the characters and then with the story with Henry and Sam. And then when this happens, it sort of takes you out, but then it doesn't. And I'm thinking like on the end of a casual watcher of HBO who's like, yeah, I'm going to watch this. This is something. Is it really the monster, quote unquote show? Or is this something else? And it really is something else. And I think that's the magic of it. And that was the magic of the game. The game definitely stood out. And I remember times trying to promote it to people that were like, it's just another zombie game. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. There's a story. And hopefully those people, I don't talk to them anymore because of their beliefs. But I'm hoping that now they are thinking back in their head. I'm like, wow, I remember that weirdo guy that was telling me this that time on the train. You know what? He was right. He was right about this show. And there we go. So I liked it. I liked it. I don't know if I would say it's the best, but I'll tell you this much. This has really set my heart on ease that there is not going to be a single bad episode. I can't see them pooping the bed on the remaining 4 episodes. It's just, this is it. It's apparent they had an idea. They knew their goals. They knew what they wanted to hit, which is pretty much everything that made the game great, which is fantastic. And it's working. And even when they deviate, which we'll get into, it still fits. It fits. It doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel like, oh, you did this because of X, Y, and Z. No, it all works. So I'm just happy that this is a fantastic show and look forward to the remaining 4 episodes.
I agree 100%. And excellent takeaways as always, Adam. So we're going to get into the deviations. So I just want to start this off by saying, to quote what Carlos said, yes, the excellent job casting Henry and Sam. The actor who actually plays Henry, his name, I believe, is Lamar Johnson. This guy also played Kofi Jones in Your Honor, which is, of course, if you know what happened to that character.
That was first season 1. Season 1.
Yeah. The guy, the kid that innocently got killed. So that was an excellent casting job because, yeah, he's very convincing as a character. But just to get into the deviations with this episode, now we did get a little bit of the backstory of Sam. We get the backstory of the 2 brothers, because in the game, as you're going to these houses, you run into them as you're trying to find safety. But yeah, we got some more context as to their backstory. We know that I believe the lady's name is Stephanie, right? Her brother was somebody that Henry killed. And that explains why she's after Henry, because you had mentioned last week, Adam, why is that she kept mentioning Henry. So we got our answer.
It was also because of medicine. It was like there was some medicine that was needed for his brother, but then also her brother, who was in charge of, I guess, that rebellion group, needed, and he chose to steal it or do whatever to get it for his brother, and then of course her brother passed away.
Yes, yeah. And that also was a deviation because, as you already mentioned earlier, Sam is deaf. Also, Sam has leukemia. None of that stuff was in the actual game. So that was a major deviation. I kind of feel like it made you feel even more for the character, because just the unfortunate circumstances of how he's doing health-wise, so on and so forth. So I thought that was a very, heartbreaking to hear that.
Do you remember that weird? I remember that the Etch-a-Sketch type pad that he was using.
Yeah,
to write notes.
Yeah,
that was in. I remember pharmacies and bodegas and stuff, and like the 99-cent spinny rack. You can get like little army men and stuff. And I remember seeing that. And I was like, when I saw it in this episode, I'm like, man, I haven't seen that in years, decades.
To give context to the people that are under 30 years old, those were our iPads. Instead of apps, we filled it up with our imaginations.
That's it.
Yes,
it was like magic.
I'm glad that they had that in the show to highlight that. When Sam and Henry do actually, when they do decide to, work together with Joel and Ellie, they did have the scene where they was in the sewer and they were in that classroom. That classroom, I remember that setting from the game, specifically that setting.
I remember all the letters, all the things that you pick up and stuff that you read. I mean, it's tragic of what happened to all those people down there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was very tragic. Now, the unfortunate thing is, and again, this is where the game is different. They do have a point when you're in the sewers where you get separated, where Joel has to, for a little while, he has to take care of Sam, and Henry has to take care of Ellie. So we didn't get that, and they get separated, and it happens where the clickers, all types of creatures, coming after them. So that wasn't in the show, which is fine. I figured that as long as they finished out what they were supposed to do towards the end, then I was going to be satisfied, and I was. So
it definitely surprised me because I thought about that too, but I was like, what's going to happen in my mind, and that's from years and years of watching The Walking Dead. Is I was expecting like a haunted house type of situation to take place. It's like like Henry kept saying, everything is clear, and then Joel's like, are you sure you've been down there? Well, no, but I talked to this guy, and he said, and so they go down there, and that's the first thing I thought of. I wasn't sure if they were going to do the separation, especially with the situation now of Sam being deaf. That would make things a little more complicated. But I did think that they were going to be running around the tunnels with their flashlights and all kinds of craziness and fighting the clickers and stuff. But clearly that they didn't go that route because they had this other big battle topside planned out, which worked out.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll jump into that real briefly. Then I'll let you guys, because you may have some other things you noticed that were different from the game too. But this is the last point I do want to mention. We did have that, everything that happened when they got to that town and you had the sniper. Because I remember that actually was one of the more annoying parts of the game, where you have to try to get to that sniper without getting killed. But of course, the difference is that was in daytime. In the show, it's in nighttime.
Yeah.
So I was talking back and forth with my brother. I said, well, hold on, how could the sniper can't really see at nighttime? So
and he pointed it out too. Joel pointed it out. He's like, he's a bad shot and it's dark. You'll make it. He's like, you'll make it. Don't worry, he's not gonna hit us.
Yeah, he was right. They had that whole scene where he tried to tell him, oh, don't do it. So they're trying to make you again let Joel show you he will do what he has to do, but he gave that guy a choice to say, hey, put the gun down, just surrender. And then the guy said nope, so he killed him. And so it is what it is. But the thing is that, of course, after that happens, then you see that Stephanie and her crew are coming for that. They know where they're at now. They're coming. Of course, they had the trucks. I remember in the game there was a tank that was coming down that area, and then you also had people running after, Ellie, Henry, and Sam, which they did have in this as well. It was a different though, again, because in the game they were running after them, trying to capture them. You had to shoot them. This was different because, obviously it's not Fedra, it's this other group of people that are coming after them. And obviously, the motivation for taking out Henry. We know what Stephanie's motivation is. So they have all of the drama of they get to that point.
It's
Kathleen, that's it. I don't know why I kept thinking Stephanie. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
I felt there was no need to remember her name because I knew she was not going to make it out of this episode. So I was like,
oh yeah. You're right about that.
And Rich, while we're at it, I will mention one of the things that I didn't really like about this episode was some of the Kathleen stuff. I just felt like she was kind of odd. I don't know why. I just some stuff just didn't work for me. and with her
I-
They tried to
characterization.
they had to throw more backstory with her second in command, when she had to, talk about her brother and this and that, and why
Yeah,
she's doing
and
it. And yeah, my brother would have wanted me to forgive him because he would have understood with the boy, but I can't do that. I was like, really? You're putting
yeah.
everyone's life at risk because of your own vendetta with a child? Come on now.
The one thing that I do understand about that situation is Fedra. What they're making it seem like is Fedra was horrible to these people, and they've mistreated them for decades, for almost 20 years or 20 years. And what they did with the opening scene, they showed all of these people sort of when to take over Fedra, and just going crazy. Like they were, and Rich, you were talking about this previously in other episodes about the brutality of this show. That
Yep.
first scene was brutal, man. It
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
brutal. And these are the people. These are the people. These are the rebels that overcame Fedra and took over. And Kathleen, I guess, is one of the people that made this possible, because the brother, he was Henry said he was a saint. So and he was the leader of this group. So it seemed like he wasn't responsible for getting the people to take over. Maybe he was responsible for getting these people together, but it was more Kathleen, the person who, through her brutality, take over and be in charge.
So if
Um,
anything, I mean, they didn't go too much into it, but in my mind, I was putting together that Kathleen was the second to her brother. So it
yeah,
was like they were the ones running it, and then they had the super soldier with them, and that was the trio right there. And then once he fell, that's when she focused everyone's attention on not well, who's the leader? Well, no, we're all working together. We got to get Henry. Remember, she kept saying Henry's the problem. This Henry's this and that. And even at that one point, when Henry, when she calls out Henry, and he's all right, listen, you got me, but let the kids go. She says it no, because her and her friend would have killed the one of their guys. So she knew, but before she was saying that this was Henry. This is Henry and Henry's plan and his people and Henry. It's like as if he had like this whole group of people working alongside him.
Yep.
So I think it was more of a control thing, that she was just trying to fill that role. Like don't dwell on the fact that my brother's dead and who's the leader. I'm in charge. I'm gonna help you. Let's kill the bad guy and then we'll take it from there.
That's exactly what it felt like. And at one point, I did want to make to go to what Carlos said. Carlos, I agree with your criticism 100%. When I saw this character, I thought to myself, when I saw what ultimately happened to this character, I thought to myself, why the hell didn't this happen to Pamela Milton in the Walking Dead finale? Because that's a character that I wanted to see go out. I don't care about her getting arrested. I wanted her to suffer, but we didn't get that. So
No.
mhm.
no. So one other quick thing that I will mention. So we already mentioned the fact that you do see the bloater, you do see the clickers and all these creatures coming after them. The way that they shot that scene, where you see all of them coming out of the out of the ground, that was intense,
Yeah,
and that
that
was
was pretty good.
And then the kid ones. And that was a
yeah,
big part of what in the game that you saw underground when you found the notes and stuff, and then you would see the kids that turned.
yep,
That was a big part. So it was cool to
that
see
was
that right at
huge.
that point. That's what killed her. It was one of the kid ones jumping on her.
Hmm. I thought that was very well done. The way they shot that, the big explosion and then all the tension, the whole scene where Ellie jumps into the car, and then you see, like you said, Adam, the kid clicker jumps in there as well to go after her. I mean, it really, for someone, if you didn't never played the game, you felt a sense of tension as to wondering how this was going to end, because you see all of this stuff and you think how are they going to get out of this situation. Um, but eventually they do, and then we'll go to what happens in the final portion of this episode, where there was another slight deviation here. All right, this is when they finally do get to somewhere. you see Sam is in the back and Ellie's talking to him. And again, let me also add this because I didn't mention it earlier. I love that they emphasized the comics in this episode because
Mhm.
those
was
were
a
the
big part.
things you had.
It's
You
a
had to collect
collectible.
that stuff.
Yeah, collectible. I didn't find them all.
Oh no, I missed one. I missed one because I just
What?
played
You
the
missed
remake.
one?
Yeah, I've only missed one. I need to go
I
back and try to get
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
platinum for the
That
remake.
would have stressed me out if there was only one. I missed a whole bunch. I mean, that workbenches. I remember when I looked at my trophies, I only had like a handful, and I'm like, "How is this possible?"
Oh yeah,
And it's-
that game is
Yeah.
not friendly when it
no,
comes to trophies.
no, it's not. And it's like it made it seem like if somebody was to look at them, like, "Oh, yo, you didn't do anything in this game." It's like, how dare you? How dare you say that to me?
Yeah.
I was like, I did a lot, but
That's
clearly
true.
I didn't. It's all about exploration. That's the whole thing. They want you to pull you out of the comfort zone. Yes, your objective is north, but what if you went south? What if you went west and you see there's a street down there? Then there's an open building and then all kinds of craziness, but that's where you find all the stuff. But whatever, I'm rambling.
Yeah, and Rich, I like that you mentioned the integration of the comics in this scenarios. What I do remember is Ellie always set that thing in the during the game. What is it? Endure and survive.
That's the name of the comic.
And that was the saying that the superhero would say, and she would always quote. So I like that they're bonding, her and Ellie and Sam over the comic, and that's why he had the paint over his eyes and stuff. I thought it was a good touch. But yeah, that scene with the bloater and stuff, I like that they didn't kill it because they just wiped everyone out with machine guns essentially, and hopefully something like this, maybe a different bloater will be an enemy in the future, because eventually they're going to have to take down one of these creature type villains. But it was good to see, hey, these dudes are not to mess with. And and the dude went ham after our boy Tommy, or video game Tommy.
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh,
yep.
it destroyed him.
Yeah. Pour one
Yeah,
out
he
for
got
him.
beheaded and ripped
Oh,
apart.
yeah.
That was very
Yeah.
graphic.
And I do want to mention, they showed the first. I think this is the first time in the show that Ellie kills a clicker with a shiv.
Yeah, she jumped
they
on
did
him.
show that.
Yep. So that could send a precedent for future episodes, and yeah, really well done scene. Really well done scene.
I agree.
So it turns out that they should have the rebels should have taken care of what was under the under that pit that was rumbling before trying to get Henry.
Because remember that was the whole thing. They said that, well, we found out from Henry is that Fedra had put all those creatures in the tunnels and the sewers. That's how they did. They locked them all down there, and that was it. But eventually, they just died out. At least that's what Henry was told by one of the Fedra workers or soldiers prior to all of this.
Oh, I do want to mention. Last episode, we saw the doctor that got shot that was captured. He was the same dude that let Henry and Sam to that attic place.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah,
because someone ratted them out. That's it.
Yep.
It just gave a little backstory on that.
So I thought that was pretty good that they sort of cleared up why the doctor was so pivotal to that scene in the last episode.
I agree with what you said, Carlos, and because you said that, I also want to mention I'm very glad of how they introduced how Henry and Sam found out about Ellie and Joel, how they came downstairs and they look outside, and it's exactly what happened last week when Ellie and Joel crashed into that store and they were in that shootout. That was excellent to introduce how they saw them, and then eventually they meet up with them. They confront them. So I thought that was excellent how they did that too. So let me go back to the point that I was mentioning earlier about the ending and the deviation of how they changed. Obviously, Sam is infected, right? But in the game, He doesn't tell Ellie that he's affected. He doesn't
Mhm.
even show her. He doesn't show her the bite mark either. So,
Right.
and again, this is what made it a lot more of emotional. I think more emotional and heartbreaking because Ellie decides, oh well, my blood is a cure. Let me go ahead and use my blood on the on your bite, and you'll be all fine. And then of course in the morning time, just like in the game, you see that Sam has turned. He tries to attack her, and then Henry has to take him out. And unfortunately, Henry always, then takes out himself. Um, it made it a lot more emotional because, again, the whole thing with the game is that, and I'm not going to really go into any spoiler territory, is that you are wondering why Ellie is so important to that. And of course, if you're watching the show, you're going to eventually see that. Those of us that play the game, we also was wondering this, and it's very interesting how you know that answer
Oh, it
you're gonna be,
answers a big question.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well,
I don't want to spoil what happens in
Yeah,
the game, but I'm just saying that I'm the
I
fact that
I
they're
was
teasing
definitely
that is,
so real quick. I'm going to ask both of you guys. Did you
yeah,
think that he was going to survive when she did that little blood transfusion there? Did you think that that was going to cure him? Because she said
well,
she was the medicine.
I'm going to tell you this, Adam. I remember clearly when I was watching that scene with 30, 40 minutes ago. She did that, and I told myself, if somehow he gets cured by this, I might drop the show right now
yep, hmm,
because it's one of the most emotional scenes from the game. It's a pivotal scene. It's a scene that clearly Ellie and Joel need, not only to bond them together even more, but also Ellie's is slowly turning more sort of, you saw her at the end of this episode. She was just gone. She was like traumatized and and just lost. But yeah, she did that scene with the blood and what obviously I didn't think they were gonna cure him, because it would be the worst decision they could have ever done. So when I was watching the scene, what I was thinking was, man, that's a little kid, a little girl trying to try to save someone's life by doing something. It's like, oh, I'm I quote unquote have cure in my, like, the blood that I have in my veins is a cure for this thing. So let me cut my hand and give them my blood, and it makes it even more emotional because they're little kids. They don't know about blood transfusion. They don't even know if they're the same blood type. So um, it's
yep.
sad. It makes it even more sad. It's an emotional, and man, and then even before that, when they were talking to each other with a little thing, and saying, are you never scared? And the way Ellie responds, and then asking her, uh, are the monsters still people within, like, inside? Are they still people inside? And man, that shit hit hard, man.
And I remember that particular what you said about, are those still people inside? That was something that he asked her in the game. So that
Yeah.
definitely was taken directly. That same dialogue was taken, but again, it's more emotional because he can't talk. He's deaf.
Mhm.
Right.
They're
The
communicating
actor
through
is
the
really
etch a
deaf too. That
sketch.
was the other thing. They
Oh,
all
oh, he
learned
is.
they all learned some sign language from him, so they can act out
Wow.
scenes and stuff they were talking about. So
So see but that adds an even deeper layer to everything that happened and made it even more of a heartbreaking situation. Um, it was necessary though because this is how the story plays out with those two characters. So I appreciate that they really stayed faithful to that. And even with the deviations, I thought the deviations made sense, as y'all said earlier. So I didn't have any issue with how they handled a lot of that stuff in the actual episode. Um, but that was the gist of what I was talking about with the deviations. Are there any other things that y'all want to mention about this episode? Feel free to do so.
It's the obvious deviation was when Sam Sam being deaf, and I felt, and we talked about this throughout this episode. I felt like it was a really good addition instead of as opposed to what they did in the game. It makes it a little bit more fresh because sometimes when you get one-to-one things, it can get a little redundant. Sometimes it's good to have some refreshing stuff that can surprise people who don't watch the show. So it was really good. And Rich, what you mentioned about Henry seeing Joel do what he did, I felt like that was a great addition because it made sense why Henry sort of kind of essentially told him that he wasn't going to kill him, or his gun wasn't loaded or anything like that, because he knew that he was in the same predicament that he was. And
well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So he clearly saw that they were chasing him. So he knew that Ellie and Joel were at least, hopefully, two people that he can side up with to help get out of that area. Because it was in Kansas City. He was like, we're trying to get out. We're the most wanted people. Now you're the close second.
Yeah, and then when Ellie told Henry and Sam that they're going to Wyoming, and Joel's like, "Are you still? What are you doing?" It's like, come on, give it two more people.
Yeah, but then right at the end of the episode, he's like, if you want, he's like, yep, we do. Henry's like, yeah, we're gonna go. Sam needs a friend, and yep, this will work. We'll do this.
Yeah, because in the game, I think it was the same thing, right? They were
going to try to get out of there. Yeah, they were going to try to get out of there together. It's like they're kids. I don't want to leave them alone. They're just trying to escape that. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to mention with the deviations, but I think you got the rest of them, Carlos. Unless you had anything that you want to add, Adam.
Not really. I mean, that was the key part. The whole thing with Sam and all of that. I don't know how I feel about the Kathleen and adding that story, if that was even needed, because we knew her end game and the end result for her. I just couldn't imagine her playing a major part, and she didn't. That was it. So yes, she was supposed to be the big bad of the two-parter, which is what I'm going to call this, the two-parter between episode 4 and 5. But it didn't really do much to move the needle in any direction. It's like, okay, fine, it's there, but you could have just had the original group from the game. It's just bad people, and Henry and Sam trying to escape this bad group. That's it. That's all you had. You didn't need to go through all this, and I guess they had to flesh it out. That's it. Maybe they were like, well, there's only so much time that we have, which still baffles me because there's only 9 episodes of the season, and there's 4 more episodes to finish off this game. And as you know, they have plenty of more encounters to come. So I'm like, how are you going to squeeze all this unless some things get cut out? Some things are going to be cut out.
I agree, because they also have to go into Ellie's backstory, and that's all going to be one episode or just on that right there alone. So, well, let me say this: did we all see the trailer for the next episode?
Yes.
I saw it. I didn't pay much attention, but yeah, I saw
it. So it looks like the next episode is going to deal with the stuff with Tommy, which is
cool. Yeah.
That's good. After that, they do have there's quite a bit of other things that happen. So you bring up a very good point, Adam. I don't know how much of that is going to get cut, but some of that may get cut.
That Tommy reunion has to be short, at least the first half hour. It can't be a whole episode of hey Tommy, and then go through all the stuff with Tommy. Remember in the game there was a lot of time with Tommy. It's like I don't think so. I don't.
Well, I agree. It should be short because we already know from what they said in the previous episode is that Joel's whole goal for going there is to just bring Ellie to Tommy. He knows some fireflies, and he would be the best person to help her get to that location. So Obviously, they're going to deal with that in the episode, but
And
yeah,
we
yeah.
still, I'm trying to remember in the sequence in the game, but they've changed it up. But I know we haven't seen her. The Firefly, the woman that actually did the voice work for that character, and then
Marlene.
Yeah, she hasn't popped up
Yeah.
again. But remember, she does pop up.
Yes,
well,
you know, along the trip. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying this. She may not. She may not.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, she probably might. You know, we have to wait and see.
In different scenarios, who knows? Yeah, we'll see.
There's definitely going to be some stuff that's different. There's a lot of things that we still need to find out. Other characters that we need to find out about too. So I'm very curious to see, because like you said, they only got 4 episodes left.
4 episodes.
And like I said, at least one of those episodes, I feel like one of those episodes is going to be about Ellie. It may go into her backstory, and then
I don't think it's going to be that long, though. Do you think it's going to be long? I'm starting to think now that it's going to be just same thing, like a half of the episode. That's it. They're not going to go too much, even though, yes, it was DLC. There was a lot that happened. They may say, you know, what do we really want to tell the story? Well, we want to talk about Ellie and Riley. This is in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. They're going to do it as quick flashbacks throughout the episode. Something's going to happen. It's going to be telling the story, and then certain things are going to flash through, and we're going to see Riley. And
that can work. If they don't go that route, I think it's going to be the entire episode, because I don't think they're just going to talk about the stuff with Riley. They're also probably going to let you know, yes, Ellie's mom, all that whole situation, because we do know that's something that, you know, we do know somebody is in the show that was casted in that role. So I kind of feel like that episode may just go like an entire flashback as to her backstory and give you more context as to why you should care about the character. But we'll have to see how they do it. But yeah, they only 4 episodes left.
I don't think they have time for that. Yeah, I don't think they have time to dedicate a whole episode to a flashback. There's just too much ground to cover.
Yeah, if it was like a 10 or even a 12 episode season,
or not even if they said, hey, 2 seasons to cover the first game, then okay. Like right now, that's the rumor that according to the head of HBO, who was on another podcast talking about, said for season 2, they're discussing breaking it up into 2 seasons for game 2, which makes sense. If you know, for those who play the game, how that game actually plays out, it does play like 2 separate games.
Well, I would say, considering how many viewers keep watching these episodes, I think HBO is definitely going to do that because they want to keep people on the platform, and it makes sense. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they're talking ridiculous number, like 26 million views or something like that across all platforms, streaming and on a regular cable. That's ridiculous numbers. Holy moly.
I do want to mention Kansas City. Everyone's dead, man. That city's gone after what happened.
Mm-hmm. That was it. That was probably the last surviving group, because remember it was one of those camps, and then they took over, and then now they're all dead.
So let me ask you a question, Carlos. You said Kansas City, you know, they're in a very bad state of affairs. Do you think that is a premonition of what we can expect on Sunday? Because I think it's very interesting how you guys kept mentioning Kansas City, and I'm like, wait a second, yeah, that's very interesting, and they wanted this to air before the Super Bowl. I think that's quite interesting coincidence.
Yeah, it could be a foretelling the massacre of the Chiefs.
Where is the Super Bowl this year? I don't even know. I know it's the Eagles and the Chiefs, but where?
Arizona.
All right, there you go. Okay, so it's not in the home, because if there's poor reffing and something bad calls, who knows? People riot in the street. They do it for other sports. So but I don't think
anyway. That will happen. I expect that to happen. But no, go ahead, Carlos.
I do want to mention, Rich. I don't know if it's a predicament of what's going to happen in the game. All I'm saying is I hope the Eagles get rolled over, because I do not like that team.
Whoa. Come on now. They came close last year. It's like, this is it. It's their time to shine.
Oh well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. My team is not in it, so I
I don't get my team's not in either.
But I am going to watch it to see what happens for sure. So, we'll see. But
it will be interesting.
That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee. But like I said, I will say I am glad that they released this episode early. So that lets you know HBO values the show. They don't want it to impact their viewership. That's why they said, and they were reminding people since last week, this episode is coming out on Friday. So that was very good strategy on their part.
Yeah.
So give them props. But was there anything else y'all wanted to mention about this episode before we get ready to wrap up?
If we're ready to give our scores, I'm ready to give out mine.
Yeah. I'm ready to give my score also. I just didn't know if y'all had any other points y'all wanted to mention. I think we covered everything in the episode though.
Yeah, the episode was great. There weren't, it was pretty straightforward. I feel like a lot of these episodes have been just pretty straightforward, doing what it's supposed to do, getting us all emotional and stuff. So, it did its job. I'm anticipating the next one. The next one, it's a lot more colorful than these last couple of episodes have been, just aesthetically, looking at, I guess the wilderness of Wyoming. So we'll see where it goes. And it's going to be in 9 days, a little bit more than 9 days.
Yeah.
When this episode drops. So going to be a little bit of an extended break for us until we get to review that episode. So it will be interesting to see.
Definitely. All right, so let's talk about the scores. Do you want to go first, Adam, and let us know what your score for this episode is?
The same thing, 8.5. 8.5. I like the
story. Such a hater.
I'm not hating. How is 8.5 bad? That's a great
8.5. That's essentially an Adam 1.
No, I'm telling you, it's the whole resistance thing. The caffeine. I felt like that was filler. It wasn't really needed, and it was sort of rushed through with the backstory when she's having that conversation. Well, I know my brother would have done, but this is what I do. It's like, okay, but we still don't know why. We're filling in the gaps. We're assuming she was her brother's right hand, and that's why everyone's following her and all this stuff. They were trying to squeeze that in when that wasn't needed. They could have they had it set on a platter for them. It's the group that was running this zone are horrible. That was it. It's just a horrible group. And these two kids are trying to escape, and no one is allowed to leave. That's just how it works. But trying to squeeze all that stuff in, and I just never really connected with her or seeing her as a threat. And maybe because I felt, just from what we know, that this character does not exist in this universe. It's just here for this story part, or this two-parter here. And so this person's not going to be relevant going forward. And so in my mind is like, why even bother? It's not like the Bill situation where people are like, well, Bill was part of it, and it was up in the air if they wanted to go forward with that character or not. They chose not to, but it's fine because in the game, the same was said there. We don't know what happened to him. So that's why 8.5. I really liked the story with Sam and all that stuff that was going on, but it was just the other half of why they were running that didn't really get to me.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So I don't have a problem with that score. I'm gonna go to you next, Carlos. What would you score this episode?
I give this episode the highest of the season so far, and I give it a 9. Not a 9 point anything. Just a solid 9. I do actually agree with Adam's critiques, and I feel like that's what makes it not be a 10, because it definitely has some 10 moments. The stuff at the very end, the stuff at the very beginning, some of the stuff at the school underground, the shootout, the way that the clickers came out with the bloater, all that stuff was sort of 10 level moments. But the Kathleen stuff, I wasn't blown away by that. I feel like some of it, especially the scenes with her and her right hand man in her childhood home, just didn't land with me.
Yeah,
So
she's
that's
telling him, "Do you go to your home?" And he's like, "I'm miles away." Like, what kind of question is that?
and wouldn't she know? Like, what else do they have
Yeah,
to
it's
talk about
just
stuff? Yeah, I
it
agree.
wasn't
I wasn't a big fan of that stuff. So it brings it down a notch, but 9 is still makes it the best episode of the season for me.
That sounds good to me. I agree with the points that both of you made. My score for this episode is also a 9 because I agree. We can all agree that the Kathleen criticisms are valid. I did enjoy everything else about the episode, though, and again, I'm not saying anything bad about the episodes that came before. I thought all the episodes were good, but in terms of some memorable moments, I think this episode stood out to me. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where they go with these next 4 episodes, for sure.
And I do want to mention before we hang shop here, uh, Ellie and Joel's relationship keeps progressing. There's
Yeah,
things in their relationship that keeps going. There's some now Ellie can is it quirk at take jabs at Joel without actually annoying him, and that and stuff like that. It's I like the way that their chemistry is progressing in the show. So it keeps doing that kind of stuff that I feel like is necessary for this story.
I agree, 100%. Yes. Um, so very good job so far by HBO, PlayStation, Sony, everybody involved. Uh, and let's see what happens in the next 4 episodes. But that concludes our review of episode 5. Uh, thank you all for checking out the show. Please do consider uh, liking if you've enjoyed the conversation. Definitely leave your comments because we definitely like interacting with you all in the comment section, and consider subscribing. And again, is there anything else that either you need to plug? Adam, you can go first.
I'll plug. Of course, we also cover a Walking Dead show. We'll cover
Mhm.
all of Walking Dead. That's I Am Negan, all 3 of us. So if you're into Walking Dead and you're curious about how all these spin-offs, and we received some more information regarding that Daryl spin-off, and I don't know how I feel about it right now. I'm still like, I'm not sold on it yet. So, but yeah, we're covering that as well. So I Am Negan on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and of course over at our mothership, the main website that we have, the Koalition. So that, and just thanks for supporting us and checking us out, and especially on this new channel. We have our main Koalition channel, but this is a new one that we're trying to get off the ground. So your support is appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. And how about you, Carlos? Anything else you want to plug or any shout outs you want to give?
Just shout outs to the Coalition and shout outs to Throwdown. So you guys want to catch me and Adam and a host of other characters talk about video games, make sure to catch Throwdown show on YouTube. Every Thursday and Friday we go live on Twitch, and we talk about stuff in video games, and pretty insightful stuff. So make sure to check that out if you're interested, and hopefully you guys stick with us on for the rest of the season for The Last of Us. It's been a really good show. There hasn't been any duds so far, so we do really appreciate that as people who just as just viewers and fans of The Last of Us. So it's really appreciated, and we appreciate having the conversations, and not only between us but with the community. So leave us any comments, and we'll make sure to respond and have conversations there.
Definitely. Definitely. And once again, thank you all for your continued support. We will be back to recap the next episode next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, take care. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you all next week.
Peace.
Peace.